Good morning, my Hebrews and Shalom homies. We are in 1 Samuel 26, approximately page 310 in the scriptures. And we're at a point in the story here of Shaul, Saul, and David where you really should be caught up with what's going on, or there's a lot of detail and context that you might miss. So if you haven't read this far already, please read this far or go back in the playlist. Run away, chicken, run away. Go back in the playlist and catch up with us. Also, please get your word out and read along with us. Don't even start, chicken. You were completely quiet. See this? It's ridiculous. They're completely quiet until I start doing this, and then they just got to make noise.
I love this.
There could be a murder happening shortly. And the Ziphites came to Shaul, Saul, at Geba, saying, "Is not David hiding himself in the hills of Hakilah, overlooking the wasteland?" They're like, "Yo, Saul, isn't David over there in Hakilah?" And Shaul, Saul, rose up and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, and with him 3,000 chosen men of Israel, to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. And Shaul encamped in the hill of Hakilah, overlooking the wasteland by the way, while David was dwelling in the wilderness. And he saw that Shaul came after him into the wilderness. And David sent out spies and learned that Shaul had indeed come. And David rose up and came to the place where Shaul had encamped. And David saw the place where Shaul lay, and Abner, son of Ner, the commander of his army. And Shaul was lying within the enclosure with the people encamped all around him. So, Shaul gets a whisper, takes 3,000 of his men to the wilderness of Ziph to go track down David. David sees Shaul coming, they spy out where he is, and then David sent out spies. And David spoke up and said to Ahimelech the Hittite and to Abishai son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab, saying, "Who goes down with me to Shaul in the camp?" They're like, "Hey, I'm going to go down there and have a look. Who's coming with me?" And Abishai said, I go down with you. And David and Abishai came to the people by night and saw Shaul lying asleep within the camp, with his spear stuck in the ground by his head. Remember, the same spear that Shaul has tried to run David through with several times. So he's like chucking it at him across the court at the palace. Like, yeah, David and this spear have a history. And remember, he's armed with the sword of Goliath that he took, was given to him by the priest at the temple when he ate the showbread. One of y'all was like, "Bear, I hate it when you do that on camera." To which my response is, "I'm living my life on camera with you, and I do that from time to time in my life. So I apologize, but this is completely unscripted, no production value whatsoever. It's just me. So if you don't like it when I got a loogie, some homemade peanut butter, I apologize, but it's the way that I roll. I apologize for being me. And both you and I are just going to have to deal with it." And David and Abishai came to the people by night and saw Shaul lying asleep within the camp, with his spear stuck in the ground by his head. And Abner and all the people lay around him. And Abishai said to David, "Elohim has surrendered your enemy into your hand this day, and now please let me strike him at once with the spear, right into the earth, not a second time." Abishai's like, "Hell yeah, he's right there. He's asleep. Look at how badass Yah is. His spear's right there. I'm going to run him through, stick him to the ground. I won't even have to stick him a second time." But David said to Abishai, "Do not destroy him, for who shall stretch out his hand against the anointed of Yahweh and be guiltless?" Oh, David, you and your morals, which will falter almost immediately in this story. David also said, "As Yahweh lives, except Yahweh does smite him, or his day come that he shall die, or he shall go out to battle and perish, Far be it from me by Yahweh that I stretch out my hand against the anointed of Yahweh. And now please take the spear and the jug of water that are by his head and let us go. David's like, I'm killing him in cold blood. If he dies on the battlefield or Yah calls him home, so be it. But I'm not killing him in cold blood. But we can take the spear and the water jug. So David took the spear and the jug of water by Shaul's head, and they went away. And no man saw it, or knew it, or awoke, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from Yahweh had fallen on them. And David passed over to the other side, and stood on top of a hill far away, a great distance being between them. And David called out to the people, and to Abner, son of Ner, saying, Do you not answer, Abner? Obviously, there's some time that's passing here. So they come in during the darkness. Everybody's asleep because of a deep sleep of Yah. They contemplate killing Saul in cold blood. They do not. They leave with the spear and the jug. And they go across over to the next mountaintop, or next hill, or whatever. And one can imagine that the sun comes up. And people start stirring in the camp. And David starts mocking Abner. Yo, Abner, wake up, homie. And David called out to the people and to Abner, son of Ner, saying, Do you not answer, Abner? And Abner answered and said, Who are you calling out to the king? And David said to Abner, Are you not a man? And who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not guarded your master the king? For one of the people came in to destroy your master the king. What you have done is not good. As Yahweh lives, you are worthy to die, because you have not guarded your master, the anointed of Yahweh. I could pause right there, and if I was a pastor or a preacher, I could make hay for an hour out of that one phrase. There's 400 Bible verses that come to mind right there. But what you have done is not good. As Yahweh lives, you are worthy to die, because you have not guarded your master, the anointed of Yahweh, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. You've not guarded him. You are worthy to die. Good news. You can also be redeemed by his sacrifice. But man, you can make hay out of that forever and a day. I could probably raise enough funds to get a Gulfstream and go preach the word in Zimbabwe just by partying on that one verse right there. And now, see, where is the king's spear and the jug of water that was by his head? And Shaul recognized David's voice and said, Is that your voice, my son David? And David said, It is my voice, O master, my king. And he said, Why is this that my master is pursuing his servant? This is David speaking. Why is the king trying to kill me? For what have I done, or what evil is in my hand? Remember the last time that these two met, David cut off the corner of Shaul's robe. And Shaul had a great turning of conviction in his heart that no longer was he going to pursue David. And yeah. We're buds now. Oh, David, thank you so much. Turns out Shaul's full of nonsense. Nonsense is not the word I would use. It starts with bull and rhymes with spit. And he said, Why is this that my master is pursuing his servant? For what have I done, or what evil is in my hand? And now, please, let my master, the king, hear the words of his servant. If Yahweh has moved you against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is the children of men, then they are cursed before Yahweh, for they have driven me out today, that I should not join myself to the inheritance of Yahweh, saying, Go serve other mighty ones. You've kicked me out of the nation of Israel because of the whisperings of children of men. If Yah is the one telling you to kill me, then we'll make an offering to Yah. But if it has to do with all these knuckleheads whispering nonsense into your ears, screw them for trying to remove me from the children of Israel. And now, do not let my blood fall to the earth before the face of Yahweh. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea, as when one hunts a partridge in the mountains. And Shaul said, I have sinned. Come back, my son David, for no more am I going to do evil to you, because my life was precious in your eyes today. Boy, this sounds familiar, doesn't it? Shaul is just a real turd. Remember with Samuel 3 times, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh your Elohim. Not my Elohim, not Shaul's Elohim, your Elohim. How many times is David going to spare this guy's life? And he's like, oh, David, I am so sorry. You know what? You're right. You're right. My bad. My bad, bro. There's a chicken eating cat food over here. And Shaul said, I have sinned. Come back, my son David, for no more am I going to do evil to you, because my life was precious in your eyes today. See, I have acted foolishly, and have greatly strayed. Yeah, you think? And David answered and said, see, the king's spear, and let one of the young men come over and get it. Reminding him again, I could have killed you. This again is David saying, I could have killed you. And let Yahuwah reward every man for his righteousness and his trustworthiness. For this day Yahuwah gave you into my hand, but I would not stretch out my hand against the anointed of Yahuwah. What righteousness is here? Because righteousness is blamelessly walking in the commands of Yah. Luke 1 verse 6. That's what righteousness is. How about thou shalt not murder? David could have. And what's his face? Not Abner, the other guy. Abishai wanted to just stick Shaul right to the ground with that spear and call it good. We're done. It's murder. Because of the condition of the heart. That's why David says, if Yah calls him home, if he dies of old age, or if we kill his ass on the battlefield, that's good to go. But we're not going to kill him in cold blood here. That's my take on it anyway. And let Yahuwah reward every man for his righteousness and his trustworthiness. For this day Yahuwah gave you into my hand, but I would not stretch out my hand against the anointed of Yahuwah. And see, as your life has been valued in my eyes today, so let my life be valued in the eyes of Yahuwah, and let him deliver me out of all distress. And Shaul said to David, Blessed are you, my son, achieving much, and indeed prevailing. Then David went on his way, and Shaul returned to his place. Now, it's interesting in 21, Shaul says, I have sinned. Come back, my son David, for no more am I going to do evil to you. And then the last line is, Then David went on his way, and Shaul returned to his place. David ain't buying it. He did not go back with Shaul. Why? Because deeds, not words. Shaul keeps saying nice things and trying to do evil things. Deeds, not words. We'll do 27 too. Maybe even 28. There's a crazy story in 28. One of those things that you wouldn't quite suspect would be in the Bible. So maybe we'll make it there, maybe we won't. We shall see. And David, said in his heart, Now I shall perish by the hand of Shaul someday. There is not better for me, there's nothing better for me than to escape the land of the Philistines. He's like, I get it now, this guy is gonna kill me. And all of his buddies are probably like, yeah, no S, Sherlock, you think so? And David said in his heart, Now I shall perish by the hand of Shaul someday. There is not better for me than to escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Shaul shall give up searching for me any longer in any part of Israel, and I shall escape out of his hand. So David rose up and passed over with the 600 men who were with him to Achish, son of Maok, king of Gath. And David dwelt in Achish at Gath, with Achish at Gath, he and his men, each man with his household. David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Yisraelites, and Abigail the Carmelitess, I guess, Nabal's widow, Folly. Remember that guy whose name means folly? And it was reported to Shaul that David had fled to Gath, so he sought him no more. And David said to Achish, If I have found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country to dwell there, for why should your servant dwell in a royal city with you? So David's like, hey, is it cool if you relocate me to some little town out there on the outskirts? And Achish gave him Siklag that day. That is why Siklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. And the time that David dwelt in the country of the Philistines came to be 1 year and 4 new moons, so about 16 months. And David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites and the Gerzerites and the Amalekites, for those nations were the inhabitants of the land from old, as you go to shore, even as far as the land of Mitzrayim. And when David had stricken the land, he left neither man nor woman alive, but took away sheep and cattle and donkeys and camels and garments, and returned and came to Achish. So David's out there on the outskirts, and he's running these little sorties into the hill country there, and he's finding his ancient enemies, you know, the Geshurites and the Girzites and the Amalekites, and they're waging war. Guerrilla warfare, and they're killing every man, woman, and child, and they're taking the spoils. Now, they were commanded several hundred years before this time to kill every man, woman, and child. The inhabitants of the land from old. That's an interesting phrase in verse 8. For those nations were the inhabitants of the land from old, that they were told to destroy out of the promised land, but didn't, because if they didn't, then they would come back to bite them in the ass. Remember the Balaam and Balak story in Numbers 25? If you don't, you should go read the Balaam and Balak story. Because if you can't destroy somebody with military force, and if you can't outwit them, you can undermine their society by intermarrying with them. Yeah, a whole nother story. Literally. Numbers 25. Balaam and Balak, the talking donkey. So, but interestingly, Achish thinks David's going out there. Well, we'll see this. And when David had stricken the land, he left neither man nor woman alive, but took away sheep and cattle and donkeys and camels and garments, and returned and came to Achish. And Achish would say, Where have you made a raid today? And David would say, Against the south of Judah, or against the south of the Yahemerites, or against the south of the Canaanites. David did not keep alive man nor woman to bring news to Gath, saying, Lest they inform us, saying, Thus David did. So David said, Yeah, we went south to Judah, but really he was over there kicking the pants off of the Amalekites. But he didn't leave anybody alive from the Amalekites to come to Achish and say, Hey, David's slaughtering us. So David's telling Achish that he's attacking the nations of Israel, when in fact he's attacking those nations from old, the inhabitants of the land from old. But because there's none of them left alive, nobody can come and give a report to Achish. And this was his practice. David did not keep alive man nor woman to bring news to Gath, saying, Lest they inform against us, saying, Thus David did. And this was his practice all the days that he dwelt in the country of the Philistines. And Achish trusted David, saying to himself, He has indeed made himself a stench to his people in Israel, and has become my servant forever. He's like, oh, if he keeps this up, nobody in Israel is ever going to want him back because he's killing his own people. He's my servant forever. Let's see here. 2:8. We can do 2:8 without having to do 2:9. So, I guess we'll do 2:8, but we're not going to get into 2:9, although there's not much left after that. You got 29, 30, 31, and that's it for 1 Samuel. So, yeah, we'll do 2:8, and then next week we'll do 29, 30, 31. And it came to be in those days that the Philistines gathered their armies for battle to fight with Israel. And Achish said to David, You know, of course, that you go out with me in the army, you and your men. So Achish, the guy that's got David, got him hooked up with this little villa in the countryside, he says, Hey, bro, just so you know, you work for me, and I expect you and your men to be out there. And David's like, Yeah, Roger, that not a problem, bro. And David said to Achish, Very well, you shall know what your servant should do. And Achish said to David, Very well, I make you one of my chief guardians forever. Forever. Is probably how Achish said it, just like that. So Achish is like, Sweet, I got the soon to be, or could have been, the king of Israel, who's known for his military prowess, now under my thumb. He's one of my guys forever. And Samuel had died. Remember, the prophet Samuel died, and he was mighty in deed and word. People were afraid of him. Samuel the kingmaker. Samuel passed away. And Samuel had died, and all of Israel had mourned him and buried him in Ramah in his own city. And Shaul had put away the mediums and the spiritists from the land. Remember, these evil spirits from Yahuwah would come upon Shaul. Remember that? And then he'd try and run David through with a spear. So, interestingly enough, though, we know that Shaul did not honor Yah. Right? We talked about that. He told Samuel 3 times, Yahuwah Yir Elohim. And he honors, it's very indicative of, these people are near to me with their mouth, but far from me with their hearts, which Yah says over and over again about his chosen people that refuse to draw near to him. Right? But here, plain as day, there were mediums and spiritists in the presence of Shaul. Yeah, no wonder. No wonder. He was dancing with the devil, dabbling in the black arts. Right? So Shaul put away the mediums and the spiritists from the land, and the Philistines were gathered and came and encamped at Shunem, and Shaul gathered all of Israel, and they encamped at Gilboa. So the Philistines are set up at Shunem, and the Israelites are encamped at Gilboa. And when Shaul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. And Shaul, remember when we really meet David, is another battle against the Philistines, and Shaul doesn't have the sack to get the job done, but here comes this little shepherd guy, comes rolling out and takes his sling, and he puts a rock in between Goliath's eyeballs with scientifically about the same force, because force is mass times acceleration, about the same force as 45 ACP, boom, right in the middle of his forehead. Goliath falls over. David hops on top of him, takes Goliath's sword and lops his head off. And the Philistines are like, oh snap, we don't want none of that. And Shaul's like, yay Israel, we did it. Now here's Shaul lined up against the Philistines again. He's got no David. Right? And so he's a little shaky in the pants region. And when Shaul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. And Shaul inquired of Yahuwah, but Yahuwah did not answer him, either by dreams, or by the Urim, or by the prophets. You think? Go read Hebrews 8, the renewed covenant. And they did not continue in my ways, and I disregarded them. Shaul has not been continuing in Yah's ways for a long time, and he has been disregarded. Shaul then said to his servants, find me a woman who is a medium and go to her and inquire of her. He's like, well, if Yah won't talk to me, I'll find somebody to give me some kind of spiritual insight here. And his servants said to him, look, there is a woman who is a medium at Endor. And not Endor, not where all the little Ewok people are. Endor. And Shaul disguised himself and put on other garments and went, he and 2 of his men with him. And they came to the woman by night, and he said, please divine for me and bring someone up for me that I shall name. Bring someone up for me. But the woman said to him, look, you know what Shaul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the spiritists from the land. Why then do you lay a snare for my life to put me to death? By the way, mediums and spiritists are breaking of the Torah. Yeah. And Shaul swore to her by Yahuwah, saying, as Yahuwah lives, no punishment shall come upon you for this matter. Do not take the Lord's name in vain. Shaul is a piece of garbage who does not believe in Yah, but is using the gravitas of the name of Yah to try and conduct business with this woman to conjure up spirits. Yeah, sure. Reminds me a lot of people who are like ghost hunters who are like, it's okay, God loves me and Jesus protects me so I can go do this. And it's like, you realize you are 100% transgressing the word of Yah when you do that. Like, you're not to have anything to do with those. Doesn't mean they're not real, but it does mean that you are not supposed to have anything to do with them, good, bad, or indifferent. It's like sifting through the spiritual wreckage of a life and putting your efforts towards that rather than honoring the creator that made all things, including that spiritual wreckage of a life. It's like finding an old log in the forest and being like, wow, that's a really cool log, without having any, it's laying down, it's half rotted, there's insects crawling through it, without having any idea of the life when that tree was alive, nor even conceptualizing that some brilliant and loving and all-powerful creator made that tree and millions, billions of other trees as well. It's like, yeah, you don't need the log. It's garbage. And the woman said, whom do I bring up for you? And he said, bring up Samuel for me. Oh, snap. The dead prophet, the kingmaker. And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. And the woman spoke to Shaul, why have you deceived me? You yourself are Shaul. So she figures out that it's Saul, King Saul, Shaul. And the king said to her, do not be afraid. What did you see? And the woman said to Shaul, I saw a spirit coming up out of the earth. And he said to her, what is his form? And she said, an old man is coming up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Shaul knew that this was Samuel. And he bowed his face to the ground and did obeisance. And Samuel said to Shaul, so now Samuel, the dead prophet, is risen up out of the ground because of the spiritist. And now Samuel's talking to Shaul. Yeah, like, did you know this stuff was in the Bible? Probably not, because most people don't read it. And Samuel said to Shaul, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? And Shaul answered, I am deeply distressed, for the Philistines are fighting against me, and Elohim has turned aside from me and does not answer me anymore, neither by prophets nor by dreams. So I've called you to reveal to me what I should do. And then Samuel said, why do you ask me, seeing Yahuwah has turned aside from you and has become your enemy? And as Yahuwah has done for himself, as he spoke by me, for Yahuwah has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor David, because you did not obey the voice of Yahuwah, nor execute his burning wrath upon Amalek. Therefore Yahuwah has done this matter for you today. Further, Yahuwah also gives Israel with you into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons are with me. Tomorrow you'll be a spirit. Yahuwah also gives the armies of Israel into the hand of the Philistines. And immediately Shaul fell on the ground, his complete length, and greatly feared because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten no food at all, day or night. And the woman came to Shaul, and saw that he had been greatly disturbed, and said to him, see, your female servant has obeyed your voice, and I have put my life in my hands, and have listened to the words which you spoke to me. And now please listen to the voice of your female servant too, and let me set a piece of bread before you, and eat, so that you have strength when you go on your way. But he refused, and said, I am not going to eat. But his servants, together with the woman, urged him, and he listened to their voice. So he rose from the ground and sat on the bed. And the woman had a fatted calf in the house, and she quickly slaughtered it. She took flour, kneaded it, and baked unleavened bread from it. And she brought it before Shaul and his servants, and they ate, and rose up, and went away that night. Don't be playing with spirits. Don't get disregarded by Yah. You might go to war with some Philistines, get your pee-pee schwacked, get your entire kingdom taken away from you. Shaul cannot be trusted. We'll finish up with 30-31, or 29-30-31 next week. Bless y'all. Shalom.